Hello, boys and girls. My name is Dr. Ann Roy Moore, and this is a picture of my first name. It's very colorful. It's written in what we call manuscript, and it's a lot like me. I like to wear different colors, and I like to have things around me that are happy. And so it tells you something also sometimes about your name. Your name can be Raindrop, or it can be Sally, or it could be Joseph, but your name has meaning. And so when your parents name you, they probably had something special in mind. Maybe you were named after a granddaddy, or you were named after an uncle, or someone special in their lives. And so your name has a lot of meaning. And there are books out there where you can go and read about your name and what it actually means. So maybe after this story is over, at some time you can work with your mom and dad or with a big brother or sister and look up your name and see what it really means. Because all names have a meaning. This is a special kind of a story that we're going to read today. It's about a little person named Chrysanthemum. Chrysanthemum is actually a little mouse, but she's in a little mouse family, and they gave her a special name. This is the cover of the book. A book cover can tell you a lot about a story. So when you look at this book cover, you can see lots of things. First of all, you see the title of the book, which is Chrysanthemum. And a chrysanthemum is actually a flower. And so they have a flower on the cover also. And then here is the little mouse that the story is about, whose name is Chrysanthemum. And then it also has on this cover the author of the book. It will say by, or it may say written by, Kevin Henkes. So this cover tells you a lot, but look at the different colors around it. It's very colorful, has a nice trim around it. But the most important thing about this cover is the name of the book. There's a flower on the book, and there's a little mouse that the story is written about. So you can talk about this with your brothers and sisters and your mom and dad or your grandparents if they're with you when you listen to the story. And I hope you tell them about all of the things that you noticed about the book cover. I didn't talk about this piece. So you can look at this and also talk about what you see here. You can talk about the different colors and all of the things that you notice about the cover of the book. You may think, like I did, I noticed a big flower right in the middle. And it tells me something. And you may talk about, what does the face of this little mouse look like? Happy? Sad? What size is this little mouse compared to the flower? The flower looks tall. The little mouse looks a little bit short. So there are lots of things that you can talk about that you just see by looking at the cover of this book. All right. Now this is the story of Chrysanthemum. And before we start reading, this is about a little mouse, and the parents wanted to give her a perfect name, so they came up with this name, Chrysanthemum. Did she love her name or not? We'll find out in the book whether she really liked it or not, because we have to be good listeners. So we can find out when we look at and listen to the book whether or not she liked it. Did she appreciate her name? Do you know what the word appreciate means? Talk to somebody about what does it mean to appreciate something. Do you appreciate our moms and our dads? Why do we appreciate them? Because they do great things for us. They feed us, they give us clothes, they take us to our favorite restaurants, they take us riding in the car, they take us to grandma's house, they get us little puppies. They do wonderful things for us. So we appreciate them. We thank them for being the great parents that they are. So we appreciate it. We tell them how much we love them. That's a way of showing appreciation. I love you, Mom. Thank you for the cookies, whatever. So that's appreciation. Or if you act like, you didn't give me enough, that might not be something that shows that you appreciate them. So you're always happy when Mom and Dad do wonderful, great things for you, even though they may be small. They don't have to be things that cost a lot of money, but they may be things that make you feel good, make you feel happy. And through that big hug to Mom and Dad, you show them how much you appreciate them. But we're going to read about Chrysanthemum, and we're going to see what happened to her. And she blossoms in a way because she has the name of a flower, and blossoming in some regards means to grow, to get bigger or larger, and all of a sudden the really beautiful part of you comes out. Now, let's talk about a couple of other things that go along with this book. There are some words. There are lots of words, always lots of words in a book. But two important words in this book. One is jaundiced. The word jaundice. In this case, it means showing feelings or ideas. Now, it has another meaning, but we're not going to talk about it today. But in the English language, sometimes words have more than one meaning. And jaundice has another meaning. After you listen to this book, you might go and find out what the other meanings of jaundice might be. But right now, we're going to talk about the meaning which says showing negative feelings or ideas. The other one is winsome. Winsome. I heard someone use this word one day this week, which was interesting to me because I had looked at it as we looked at this book, and they used the word winsome in an interview. And they said when you are working with people, you kind of have to be winsome. So winsome is you're pleasing in appearance and how you act toward people. So even though you may be in charge of something, if you have a winsome attitude, then you'll be pleasing and you'll be a person that someone finds easy to work with or to be with. So when we're reading the book, I want you to be aware of these words, the word jaundice and the word winsome. And there'll be lots of other words in this book that you'll come across, but pay particular attention to those. Now again, looking at the cover, we're getting ready to read again about Chrysanthemum, and we're going to see what this Chrysanthemum is all about. Now I want you to put your listening ears on, meaning you're going to listen, and what you hear is going to go up to your brain so that you understand not only does the word go in through your ear, it goes up to the brain, and you understand or comprehend what this story is all about. So when you read, comprehension is very important. Even if you're reading for fun, or if you're reading at school, you're reading your information in your social studies book or whatever, there's some meaning that goes with it. And so you have to take the listening through the ear up to the brain, and then when you learn it, you give your brain a kiss, and you're all straight. Okay? So we're going to read Chrysanthemum. The day she was born was the happiest day in her parents' lives. She's perfect, said her mother. Absolutely, said her father. And she was absolutely perfect. Her name must be everything she is, said her mother. Her name must be absolutely perfect, said her father. And it was. Chrysanthemum. Her parents named her Chrysanthemum. Chrysanthemum grew and grew and grew. And when she was old enough to appreciate it, Chrysanthemum loved her name. She loved the way it sounded when her mother woke her up. She loved the way it sounded when her father called her for dinner. And she loved the way it sounded when she whispered it to herself in the bathroom mirror. Chrysanthemum, chrysanthemum, chrysanthemum. Chrysanthemum loved the way her name looked when it was written with ink on an envelope. She loved the way it looked when it was written with icing on her birthday cake. And she loved the way it looked when she wrote it herself with her fat orange crayon. Chrysanthemum, chrysanthemum, chrysanthemum. Now, my mother grows a beautiful plant called a chrysanthemum, and they come up every year. And all of the ladies in her family grow chrysanthemums. They make wonderful, beautiful bouquets to put on your table. Chrysanthemum thought her name was absolutely perfect. And then she started school. On her first day, Chrysanthemum wore her sunniest dress and her brightest smile. She ran all the way. Hooray, said Chrysanthemum. School. Oh boy, everybody's so excited when they first start school. It's a wonderful thing. But when Mrs. Chud took roll, everyone giggled upon hearing Chrysanthemum's name. Wow. Well, let's see what happened. It's so long, said Joe. It scarcely fits on your name tag, Rita said. I'm named after my grandmother, said Victoria. You're named after a flower. Chrysanthemum wilted. She did not think her name was absolutely perfect. She thought it was absolutely dreadful. Now she's feeling some kind of way because her friends are making fun of her name. The rest of the day was not much better. During nap time, Victoria raised her hand and informed Mrs. Chud that Chrysanthemum's name was spelled with 13 letters. That's a lot. That's exactly half as many letters as there are in the entire alphabet, Victoria explained. Thank you for sharing that with us, Victoria, said Mrs. Chud. Now put your head down. If I had a name like yours, I'd change it, Victoria said, as the students lined up to go home. I wish I could, thought Chrysanthemum miserably. Welcome home, said Mother. Welcome home, said Father. School is no place for me, said Chrysanthemum. My name is too long. It scarcely fits on my name tag. And I'm named after a flower. Oh, psh, said her mother. Your name is beautiful and precious and priceless and fascinating and winsome, said her father. It's everything you are, said her mother. Absolutely perfect, said her father. Chrysanthemum felt much better after her favorite dinner, macaroni and cheese with ketchup, and an evening filled with hugs and kisses and parcheesi. That night, Chrysanthemum dreamed that her name was Jane. It was an extremely pleasant dream. The next morning, Chrysanthemum wore her most comfortable jumper. She walked to school as slowly as she could. She dragged her feet in the dirt. Chrysanthemum, 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 she wrote. She even looks like a flower, said Victoria, as Chrysanthemum entered the playground. Let's pick her, said Rita, pointing. Let's smell her, said Joe. Chrysanthemum wilted. She did not think her name was absolutely perfect. She thought it was absolutely dreadful. The rest of the day was not much better. During nap time, Victoria raised her hand and said, a chrysanthemum is a flower. It lives in a garden with worms and other dirty things. Thank you for sharing that with us, Victoria, said Mrs. Chudd. Now put your head down. I just cannot believe your name, Victoria said as the students lined up to go home. Neither can I, thought Chrysanthemum miserably. And look at her face. Think about how she looks. Chrysanthemum looks and how she feels after her friends have said those things about her name. Welcome home, said her mother. Welcome home, said her father. School is no place for me, said Chrysanthemum. They said I even looked like a flower. They pretended to pick me and smell me. Oh, psh, said her mother. They're just jealous and envious and begrudging and disconnected and jaundiced, said her father. Who wouldn't be jealous of a name like yours, said her mother. After all, it's absolutely perfect, said her father. Chrysanthemum felt a trifle better after her favorite dessert, chocolate cake with buttercream frosting. That makes me feel good too. And another evening filled with hugs and kisses and parcheesi. That night, Chrysanthemum dreamed that she really was a chrysanthemum. She sprouted leaves and petals. Victoria picked her and plucked her leaves and petals one by one until there was nothing left but a scrawny stem. It was the worst nightmare of Chrysanthemum's life. Chrysanthemum wore her outfit with 7 pockets the next morning. She loaded the pockets with her most prized possessions and her good luck charms. Chrysanthemum took the longest route possible to school. She stopped and stared at each and every flower. Chrysanthemum, 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 the flowers seemed to say. That morning, the students were introduced to Mrs. Twinkle, the music teacher. Her voice was like something out of a dream, as was everything else about her. The students were speechless. They thought Mrs. Twinkle was an indescribable wonder. They went out of their way to make a nice impression. Mrs. Twinkle led the students in scales. Then she assigned roles for the class musical. Victoria was chosen as the dainty fairy queen. Rita was chosen as the spiffy butterfly princess. Jo was chosen as the all-important pixie messenger. And Chrysanthemum was chosen as Daisy. Chrysanthemum's a daisy, chrysanthemum's a daisy, Jo, Rita, and Victoria chanted, thinking it was wildly funny. Chrysanthemum wilted. She did not think her name was absolutely perfect. She thought it was absolutely dreadful. What's so humorous? Asked Mrs. Twinkle. Chrysanthemum was the answer. Her name is so long, said Jo. It scarcely fits on her name tag, said Rita, pointing. I'm named after my grandmother, said Victoria. She's named after a flower. My name is long, said Mrs. Twinkle. It is, said Jo. My name would scarcely fit on a name tag, said Mrs. Twinkle. It would, said Rita. And, said Miss Twinkle, I'm named after a flower too. You are, said Victoria. Yes, said Mrs. Twinkle. My name is Delphinium. Delphinium Twinkle. And if my baby is a girl, I'm considering Chrysanthemum as a name. I think it's absolutely perfect. Chrysanthemum could scarcely believe her ears. She blushed. She beamed. She blossomed. Chrysanthemum, chrysanthemum, chrysanthemum. Joe, Rita, and Victoria looked at Chrysanthemum longingly. "Call me Marigold," said Joe. "I'm Carnation," said Rita, pointing. "My name is Lily of the Valley," said Victoria. Chrysanthemum did not think her name was absolutely perfect. She knew it. Now, here's something called an epilogue. It's an ending. And it says, overall, the class musical was a huge success. Chrysanthemum was absolutely perfect as a daisy. Victoria made the only mistake. She completely forgot her lines as the dainty fairy queen. Chrysanthemum thought it was wildly funny, and she giggled throughout the entire dance of the flowers. Eventually, Miss Twinkle gave birth to a healthy baby girl, and of course, she named her, guess what? Chrysanthemum. And that's the end of this story. I hope that you've enjoyed this story, boys and girls. And if you have time, you can talk about it with your friends or talk about it with your family and tell them the story. You can retell the story, all of the important things about the story that you remember. So when you retell it, you're not going to say word for word or verbatim, as we say. You don't have to say word for word. You just tell what the story was about and the important parts of the story and which parts you liked, what was your favorite part, and what you think about names like chrysanthemum or daisy or any of those other flowers that you might have growing outside in your yard. And maybe at some point, if you have time, you can draw a beautiful picture of some flowers in your yard. Go outside and look at them, and then decide you're going to make a big, beautiful picture. And maybe you'll send it to Grandma. I bet she'll enjoy looking at it, or Granddaddy, or your favorite aunt or uncle. Okay? Thank you so much for being good listeners. And if you've been good and still and quiet and listened to the story, perhaps you'll start to enjoy listening and reading to books and reading as many as you can every day. Read something, at least one book, maybe 2 or 3. Thank you.
We are so glad you tuned in for today's storybook reading. Don't forget to visit us at mgmreads30.org for follow-up activities for this book and more. Also, please follow us on Facebook and Instagram, and make sure you don't miss our weekly drawings and contests. That's all for now. See you next time.